storm I knew. I'm a walk, I'm a march on the regular, painting white flags blue.
What kind of America do we want? One where we're divided, angry, depressed? Come on, we're Americans. Fascism, we conquered it. The moon, landed on it. The future, building it. Freedom, nobody loves it more. And we fight for it. Freedom from control. Freedom from extremism and fear.
Extremists want to take us back, but we are not going back.
We go forward. That's American. And we need a leader who is for the people.
Ours is a fight for the future.
Kamala Harris, protecting people from predators and big drug cartels, holding Wall Street banks accountable.
A crime perpetrated against our middle class.
Standing up to dictators and fighting for all of us.
I say we fight.
That's our choice, a prosecutor or a felon.
Are you ready to make your voices heard? Of America. And are we ready to fight for it?
I'ma keep on running 'cause the winner don't quit on themselves.
And when we fight, we win. To be with everyone this evening in this hall and everyone at home. This is going to be a great week. And I want to kick us off by celebrating our incredible President Joe Biden, who will be speaking later tonight. Joe, thank you for your historic leadership, for your lifetime of service to our nation, and for all you will continue to do. We are forever grateful to you. Thank you, Joe. And looking out at everyone tonight, I see the beauty of our great nation. People from every corner of our country and every walk of life are here, united by our shared vision for the future of our country. And this November, we will come together and declare with one voice, as one people, we are moving forward. With optimism, hope, and faith, so guided by our love of country, knowing we all have so much more in common than what separates us. Let us fight for the ideals we hold dear, and let us always remember, when we fight, we win. God bless you. God bless the United States of America. Good night, everyone.
Vice President Kamala Harris, the Democratic nominee, paying tribute there to President Joe Biden, who we expect to hear from later this evening. We want to welcome to the table now Anita Dunn. She served as senior advisor to President Biden until she left the White House last month. She's now senior advisor to Future Forward. That's a super PAC supporting Kamala Harris's campaign. Thanks so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me this evening.
Yeah, of course. You have said that the speech that President Biden will deliver tonight, it will not be a farewell speech. He is going to make the case for a Harris presidency. Still, though, how is he feeling about this moment? This was not the convention he was expecting a month ago. He is someone who has served a public service for 50 years before he was forced out by Democratic leaders. How is he feeling about all this?
You know, he's going to come out tonight and make a speech that makes the case for Kamala Harris and for moving this country forward. He'll talk about the work he did running in 2019 to save the soul of the country, to fight for democracy. He'll talk about the fact that under his administration, democracy proved it could deliver for people, deliver real results. And now, in 2024, the fight is to preserve democracy by electing Kamala Harris and defeating Donald Trump. So he is a president very focused on the mission ahead, which is to elect Kamala Harris. And that's what you'll hear tonight.
Anita, you've gone from one of the president's closest advisors to now devoting yourself to getting Vice President Harris elected, running this pro-Harris super PAC. But she's walking a very difficult line right now and will for the next several weeks. She's running as a change candidate while as a sitting vice president to a president who has some pretty unpopular policies with a number of people in the American electorate. How would you advise her to navigate that moving forward on issues like immigration and the economy and the Middle East? How should she break or distance herself from the Biden policies to get more people on board?
You know, every vice president who runs for the presidency faces the challenge of moving on a continuum from loyalty to independence so that voters see that they're running with their own program and their own policies. You know, the vice president began that process last Friday. And of course, this is the most compressed election any of us can remember. But she went out and she made a speech where she clearly staked out positions that are Kamala Harris positions, not just Joe Biden positions, and made it clear that she is going to build on many of the pieces of the economic policy that the president's put in place to really renew and restore the middle class, but that she's got some things of her own. And that's what she needs to do between now and Election Day, is demonstrate to the American public what her presidency will be about. When she talks about moving the country forward, what does that mean?
You know, the transition from the Biden-Harris team to the Harris-Walz team has seemed, from the outside looking in, fairly seamless. Take us inside that process. What has the last month been like from where you sit?
You know, I think that the Biden-Harris team became the Harris-Walz team because there's a shared set of values and an absolute sense of mission that translated from one candidacy to the other. And don't forget, she's been our vice president. She was part of our ticket back in 2020. So this is a team that was already working for her and already excited about her. I give the vice president a lot of credit, and I give the president a lot of credit for how seamless this has been. And it's because of their partnership and also because they have made it clear this is what the stakes are. We have to defeat Donald Trump. We have to elect Kamala Harris.
Is it fair to say, then, that a Harris administration, if she wins, would in many ways be a continuation of the Biden presidency?
You know, I'm not sure that is fair to say because each administration has its own rhythms. It has its own agenda. I think that she'll answer that question better than I can for her. But at the end of the day, her job is to go out to the American public and make the case for when she says she's going to move the country forward, what does that mean? And she started that Friday by making it clear that her economics will be centered on growing the middle class, and that her belief is when we grow the middle class, we grow the economy. And that's the beginning of a process here.
Anita, can I ask you about President Biden, who you know so well and have for so long? And I spoke earlier today with Senator Chris Coons, who's also known him for many, many years.
Yes.
And I'd asked him, is there any part of the president that second-guessed his decision to step aside? And he said immediately, we all second-guess our decisions at some point. I wonder if you had sensed that as well, and also how you would characterize this moment for the president. Is it bittersweet? Is it complicated? How would you describe it?
I think this is going to be an emotional evening in this hall. I think there's a lot of emotion that the delegates are going to feel, a lot of emotion that the guests are going to feel, and a lot of emotion the president will feel. But having said that, he is not a person who spends a lot of time second-guessing, and he's been very clear since the day he announced he was no longer a candidate that he wanted his team to put together a plan, the way we always have 100-day plans in the White House. He wanted to see it. He wanted his agenda to get pushed forward. He wanted to know what he was going to be doing, and he wanted to know how we were going to get Kamala Harris elected. And he is really someone who, having gone through so much in his life, has the ability to focus on what is most important. And I believe that's what you're going to hear tonight, as a president who's focused on what's most important.
Even though there are Democrats who are very enthusiastic about the Harris-Walz ticket, there are also Democrats who take issue with the way that they think President Biden was treated. And Speaker Emerita Pelosi said today about the Democrats who disagreed with her public questioning of Joe Biden's electability, if they're upset, I'm sorry for them. That's a direct quote. How do you respond to that?
Oh, the Speaker Emeritus has been very clear, her feelings on all of this. I think that at the moment, what Democrats really need to be doing is looking forward and moving forward with this ticket, because this is a close race and we cannot afford to lose. The stakes are too high for the American people. They're too high for all of the progress that the Biden-Harris administration has made since January 2021. And so I think the president and I think people around the president are focused on how do we get that job done.
We saw Vice President Harris take the stage there. We heard this room absolutely erupt into cheers for her. And we heard her very heartfelt way thank President Biden, saying, "Thank you, Joe." She said, "I want to thank you for your lifetime of service, for your leadership." She also said, "I want to thank you for all the work you'll continue to do." There's a passing of the torch here tonight. Does this make Kamala Harris now the leader of the Democratic Party? And if so, what role do you see President Biden playing going forward?
President Biden's going to do whatever helps Vice President Harris get elected. Add volunteer-in-chief to the list of jobs that he has now. I think, that the Democratic nominee is kind of de facto the leader of the Democratic Party. But I think that, in many ways, the president will continue to be a leader as well. And it speaks to their relationship that it's going to work out very well, the same way that the campaign has been able to transition so seamlessly, because they know each other, they trust each other, they love each other.
Anita Dunn, longtime Biden advisor, now senior advisor for Future Forward. Thanks so much for spending some time with us this evening.
Thank you for having me this evening. Thanks.
We appreciate it. Let's head to the convention stage now, because Steve Kerr, Team USA's men's basketball coach, and of course the coach of the Golden State Warriors, is addressing the convention right now.
I believe that leaders must tell the truth. I believe that leaders should be able to laugh at themselves. I believe leaders must care for and love the people they are leading. I believe leaders must possess knowledge and expertise, but with the full awareness that none of us has all the answers. And in fact, some of the best answers often come from members of the team. And if you look for those qualities in your friends or your boss or an employee or your child's teacher or your mayor, then shouldn't you want those same qualities in your president? And when you think about it that way, this is no contest. With Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, I see all those qualities. They have devoted their lives to serving other people. Whether Vice President Harris was defending her community in the courtroom, or Governor Walz was inspiring the next generation in the classroom, or on the field, for that matter. By the way, coach to coach, that guy's awesome. Although, I have to say, Coach Walz, way too much reliance on the blitz in '99 against Mankato East. You had a strong defensive line. I would have played more press coverage with your corners and then dropped the safeties into a Tampa 2. That's just me. Sorry. I wanted you to know how I feel every day of the NBA season, all right? But listen, the joy, the compassion, the commitment to our country that we saw at the Olympics, that is what Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have. And it is what our country needs. Leadership, real leadership. Not the kind that seeks to divide us, but the kind that recognizes and celebrates our common purpose. Think about what our team achieved with 12 Americans in Paris, putting aside rivalries to represent our country. Now imagine what we could do with all 330 million of us playing on the same team. Not as Democrats, not as Republicans, not as libertarians, but as Americans who know the greatness of this nation doesn't come from any one of us, but from each of us doing our part to build a more perfect union. That vision is what this campaign is all about. It's why I'm here tonight. And it's why I'll be getting out every day to help people get out and vote on November 5th and elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz as the next president and vice president of the United States. And after the results are tallied that night, we can, in the words of the great Steph Curry, we can tell Donald Trump, night, night. Thank you.
All right. Democrats would need to flip just a handful of seats in November to win back control of the U.S. House of Representatives, and many eyes will be on New York for pickup opportunities. But they also have to hold on to some competitive seats like those represented by Congressman Pat Ryan, who represents a district north of New York City, and he joins us now. Thanks for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
You were among the first House members to publicly call on President Biden to exit the race after his debate performance in June. I wonder then what your assessment is of the Harris-Walz ticket and how that potentially boosts Democrats' chances of winning the House.
I think the combination of Joe Biden patriotically passing the torch and then Kamala Harris and Tim Walz absolutely taking command of this race in a way that has Trump, I think, petrified, and now, for example, attacking my fellow combat veterans, attacking Medal of Honor recipients, just self-inflicted wound after self-inflicted wound. So I think we're on the offensive now.
You're, fair to say, I think, playing a little defense back home as well, though. We know Republicans are targeting your seat, among others. So I just wonder what you think, what you want to hear from the Harris-Walz campaign that will help folks like you. That what kind of policy articulation, what kind of message you want to hear from this ticket that would actually have a positive down-ballot impact?
Yeah, I mean, I think Vice President Harris has been right on the message for a district like mine and for the country. She's been centering freedom, talking about protecting, expanding, and defending core American freedoms, reproductive freedom, of course, but economic freedom. We saw her agenda, or the beginnings of it, on Friday, making sure that folks that are really feeling that financial pressure right now get some relief. That is that winning combination, and we're hearing it tonight. We're going to continue to hear it, and I think it's now at sort of very close to an unstoppable level of momentum for Kamala Harris.
Well, you won your seat in 2022 by campaigning aggressively on the issue of reproductive rights after the Supreme Court overturned Roe. Based on your experience, I mean, what from that was instructive that you would advise other Democrats to do in those races where reproductive rights might be a resonant issue?
I think on that issue of reproductive freedom and abortion rights and all issues, we need to stop pulling our punches. We need to be clear from the heart, from the gut. And we've seen Vice President Harris do that and really connect with people and give people something to be for. And that's the energy that we're feeling here right now.
When New York Democrats underperformed in the last election, that was largely why Republicans were able to pick up the House. What has your delegation, your caucus, I mean, what are you planning to do differently in this next race?
Well, we have Leader Hakeem Jeffries from my home state, who not only leads our delegation, but is, of course, about to be the Speaker of the House, which is very exciting. On the message, we've talked about that. Organizationally, the New York State Democratic Party, under Hakeem's leadership, has really stepped up our game. In my district, for example, we have field offices, paid volunteers, to really marshal this energy of volunteers, and that's all going to build to, I think, a winning formula, not just in my race, but I think we're going to flip several of these critical New York House seats from red to blue.
You care to make a prediction? We should mention we had Speaker Emerita Pelosi on not too long ago.
I wouldn't want to.
And she said, she predicted that you're going to win a majority here, but she did cite, as Jeff mentioned, those 5 seats as those were like critical seats in New York. That you can tell she still holds dear. Should have not lost those. But how do you think y'all will fare in this next election?
I feel really good. We've got to earn it. I mean, I think we should not be celebratory. We should not get ahead of ourselves. But the momentum and the trajectory is just growing and building. I think we could easily flip 3 and maybe up to 4 or 5 in New York.
All right, that is New York Congressman Pat Ryan. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, guys.
We're going to turn our attention now to the convention floor because Shawn Fain, who's the president of United Auto Workers, is addressing the convention right now.
That's not just my opinion, that's a fact. All we have to do is look at the track record. When Donald Trump was president, corporate America ran wild. Donald Trump did not bring back the auto industry. When Donald Trump was president, auto plants closed. Trump did nothing. Trump told workers in Lordstown, Ohio, that he would be bringing all the auto jobs back. And Trump did nothing. In 2019, General Motor workers went on strike for 40 days for good jobs and a better life. And Trump did nothing. Talk is cheap. But in 2019, you know who was on the picket line standing shoulder to shoulder with auto workers? I'll give you a clue. Her initials are Kamala Harris. In 2023, who helped bring jobs back to Lordstown, Ohio? Kamala Harris. And in 2024, who will stand with the working class in our fight for justice? Kamala Harris. And that's the difference. Donald Trump is all talk, and Kamala Harris walks the walk. Woo. In the words of the great American poet, Nellie, it's getting hot in here. It's hot in here. It's hot in here because you're fired up and you're fed up, and the American working class is fired up and fed up. The American working class is in a fight for our lives. And if you don't believe me, just last night, blue-collar workers, the UAW members at Cornell University had to walk out on strike for a better life because they're fighting corporate greed. And our only hope is to attack corporate greed head on. Corporate greed turns blue-collar blood, sweat, and tears into Wall Street stock buybacks and CEO jackpots. It causes inflation. It hurts workers. It hurts consumers, and it hurts America. And corporate greed is alive and well in the auto industry. You know, last fall, we achieved life-changing gains in our strike at the Big Three. We even won a commitment to reopen a closed plant not too far from here. We were able to do that thanks to the support of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and the thousands of auto workers that went on strike. But a year later, one company wants to go back on their commitments in our contract. And let me be clear, Stellantis must keep the promises they made to America in our union contract. And the UAW will take whatever action necessary at Stellantis or any other corporation to stand up and hold corporate America accountable. And when the UAW stands up, we know who stands with us and who stands against us. Donald Trump laughs about firing workers who go on strike. And Kamala Harris stands shoulder to shoulder with workers when they're on strike. And that's the difference between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump the scab. Trump is pushing divide and conquer tactics of the rich. It's the oldest trick in the book. They want to blame the frustrations of working class people. They want to take those frustrations, they want to blame it on race. They want to blame it on LGBTQ plus people. They want to blame it on some destitute and desperate person at the border. They do that because they want working class people to be divided and to focus and keep the focus off the one true enemy, corporate greed. The rich think we're stupid, but working class Americans see this for what it is. This is our generation's defining moment. So I have a question for you. Are you ready to stand up, speak up, and show up and put Kamala Harris and Tim Walz in the White House? We need a defender of the working class in the White House, someone who is one of us and someone who knows how to fight. And that fighter is the next President of the United States, Kamala Harris. Thank you.
Please welcome New York Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Chicago for your energy. Thank you, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, for your vision. And thank you, Joe Biden, for your leadership. You know, 6 years ago, I was taking omelet orders as a waitress in New York City. I didn't have health insurance. My family was fighting off foreclosure, and we were struggling with bills after my dad passed away unexpectedly from cancer. Like millions of Americans, we were just looking for an honest shake. And we were tired of a cynical politics that seemed blind to the realities of working people. It was then, only through the miracles of democracy and community, that the good people of the Bronx and Queens chose someone like me to elect them in Congress. And America, in my heart, I know from that same cloth of hope and aspiration, we will also elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz as President and Vice President of the United States of America. I am here tonight because America has before us a rare and precious opportunity. In Kamala Harris, we have a chance to elect a president who is for the middle class because she is from the middle class. She understands the urgency of rent checks and groceries and prescriptions. She is as committed to our reproductive and civil rights as she is to taking on corporate greed. And she is working tirelessly to secure a ceasefire in Gaza and bringing hostages home. In Kamala Harris, I see a leader who understands. I see a leader with a real commitment to a better future for working families. And Chicago, we have to help her win. Because we know that Donald Trump would sell this country for $1 if it meant lining his own pockets and greasing the palms of his Wall Street friends. And I, for one, am tired of hearing about how a two-bit union buster thinks of himself as more of a patriot than the woman who fights every single day to lift working people out from under the boots of greed, trampling on our way of life. The truth is, Don, you cannot love this country if you only fight for the wealthy and big business. To love this country is to fight for its people, all people, working people, everyday Americans like bartenders and factory workers and fast food cashiers who punch a clock and are on their feet all day in some of the toughest jobs out there. You know, ever since I got elected, Republicans have attacked me by saying that I should go back to bartending. But let me tell you, I'm happy to any day of the week because there is nothing wrong with working for a living. Imagine having leaders in the White House who understand that. Leaders like Kamala and Tim. But Chicago, just because the choice is clear to us does not mean that the path will be easy. Over the next 78 days, we will have to pour every ounce, every every minute, every moment into making history on November 5th. But we cannot send Kamala and Tim to the White House alone. Together, we must also elect strong Democratic majorities in the House and in the Senate so that we can deliver on an ambitious agenda for the people. Because if you are a working parent trying to afford rent and childcare, Kamala is for you. If you are a senior who had to go back to work because your retirement didn't stretch far enough, Kamala is for you. If you're an immigrant family just starting your American story, Kamala is for you. America, when we knock on our neighbor's door, organize our communities, and elect Kamala Harris to the presidency on November 5th, we will send a loud message that the people of this nation will not go back. We choose a new path and open the door to a new day, one that is for the people and by the people. Thank you. Thank you very much. God bless. God bless you all.
Wow. How about that AOC? Good Lord. So Kamala Harris's story begins in a middle-class neighborhood in the East Bay. Yeah. In a modest apartment above a nursery school, in a close-knit community where people looked out for one another, with a mother who instilled in Kamala Harris the core principles that have defined her life in public service. These are the experiences that made her the leader she is today.
The neighborhood we grew up in was a very hardworking, middle-class, tight-knit community. Families going to church on Sunday, kids playing in the front yard. Mommy got us these bright blue matching bikes with banana seats, and we were surrounded by caring adults.
This neighborhood on Bancroft Way, we've spent so much time here. Behind me is where it all began. Her mom, Shamala, rented the apartment that was above the Shelton's nursery. So in the beginning, Mrs. Shelton used to babysit the girls.
Shamala was a single mom. Life was not easy for them, but she loved her daughters fiercely.
Kamala herself says that her mom told her that she may be the first to do many things, but to make sure that she's not the last. She's always been that kind of person, a true leader, and very protective of her friends and her family.
When Kamala was all of 4 years old, her best friend in kindergarten, Stacy Johnson, got into something with another kid on the playground.
This one particular day, we had made some clay art, and this one boy in our class had taken mine for whatever reason and threw it on the ground, and it shattered. So Kamala, being very protective, just jumped in front of me and stood up to him. To me, that shows the kind of person that she has always been, to stand up to the bully and to stand up for the underdog and to stand up for what is right.
Kamala carries the lessons of our mother, the fighting spirit of our mother, the compassion, and I have seen it over and over again in our growing up. When we were in high school, my sister's friend, Wanda, was being molested by a family member, and Kamala just jumped in. She wanted her to come and stay with us? And Mommy said, of course. That is Kamala. She can't help herself from standing up for people and standing up for what she thinks is right. She has been that way our whole lives. Being a protector is what led her to become a prosecutor. Looking back now, I could say it was her calling.
Please welcome Stacey Johnson Batiste and Doris Johnson.
Good evening. I'm Stacey Johnson Batiste, and this is my mom, Doris Johnson. We are so excited and honored to be here with you. Kamala and I have known each other for a long time. We met at Berkwood Hedge School. We hit it off immediately and became each other's very first best friends. Our moms also became fast friends.
And on weekends, we would pile into my 1966 Mustang, and Kamala's mom, Shamala, would sit in the front with me, and Kamala and Maya and Stacy would sit in the back, and off we would go to a movie or some adventure.
My mom still has that Mustang.
I do.
Kamala and I both get our grit from our mothers. Kamala has always been a protector. One day at school, we made clay art projects during story time when they were outside on tables to dry. For whatever reason, a boy in our class took mine, threw it on the ground, and it shattered. Kamala jumped in between him and me and said something that made him so mad, he picked up a rock or something and hit her on the head. Blood came streaming down. The school called Shamala to come take her to the hospital. The stitches she got left a scar over one of her eyes. She still has it. That's the kind of person Kamala has always been from the very beginning. Someone who doesn't hesitate to stand up for what's right, to take up for the underdog, and to stand up to bullies. I have seen it time and again, whether the bully is an individual, a gang, or a corporation. She fights for all of us. Before we go, I know my mom has one more thing to say.
Kamala, your mom would be so proud of you.
Please welcome former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
There's a lot of energy in this room, just like there is across the country. Something is happening in America. You can feel it. Something we've worked for and dreamed of for a long time. First, though, let's salute President Biden. He has been democracy's champion at home and abroad. He brought dignity, decency, and confidence back to the White House. And he showed what it means to be a true patriot. Thank you, Joe Biden, for your lifetime of service and leadership. And now we are writing a new chapter in America's story. You know, my mother Dorothy was born right here in Chicago before women had the right to vote. That changed 104 years ago yesterday. Think about it. Tennessee became the final state to ratify the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. The state legislature was deadlocked until one lawmaker's mother, a widow who read 3 newspapers a day, sent a letter to her son. "No more delays," she wrote. "Give us the vote." And since that day, every generation has carried the torch forward. In 1972, a fearless black congresswoman named Shirley Chisholm she ran for president. And her determination let me and millions of others dream bigger, not just because of who she was, but because of who she fought for. Working parents, poor children, the last, the least, and the lost. In 1984, I brought my daughter to see Geraldine Ferraro, the first woman nominated for vice president. If we can do this, Jerry said, we can do anything. And then there was 2016, when it was the honor of my life to accept our party's nomination for president. Nearly 66 million Americans voted for a future where there are no ceilings on our dreams. And afterwards, we refused to give up on America. Millions marched, many ran for office. We kept our eyes on the future. Well, my friends, the future is here. My mother and Kamala's mother could see us. They would say, "Keep going." Shirley and Jerry would say, "Keep going." matching to afford childcare, young people struggling to pay their rent. They're all asking us to keep going. So, with faith in each other and joy in our hearts, let's send Kamala Harris and Tim Walz to the White House. The story of my life and the history of our country is that progress is possible but not guaranteed. We have to fight for it and never, ever give up. There is always a choice. Do we push forward or pull back? Come together as we the people, or split into us versus them? That's the choice we face in this election. Kamala has the character, experience, and vision to lead us forward. I know her heart and her integrity. We both got our start as young lawyers, helping children who were abused and neglected. That kind of work changes a person. Those kids stay with you. Kamala carries with her the hopes of every child she protected, every family she helped, every community she served. So as president, she will always have our backs, and she will be a fighter for us. She will fight to lower costs for hardworking families, open the doors wide for good-paying jobs, and yes, she will restore abortion rights nationwide. As a prosecutor, Kamala locked up murderers and drug traffickers. She will never rest in defense of our freedom and safety. Donald Trump fell asleep at his own trial, and when he woke up, he made his own kind of history, the first person to run for president with 34 felony convictions. As Vice President, Kamala sat in the Situation Room. We also know, as Vice President, Kamala sat in the Situation Room and stood for America's values. I know what it takes, and I can tell you, as Commander-in-Chief, Kamala won't disrespect our military and our veterans. She reveres our Medal of Honor recipients. She won't be sending love letters to dictators. She will defend democracy and our Constitution and will protect America from enemies, foreign and domestic. Think about it. The Constitution says the president's job is to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. Those are the words of our founders. Take care. Just look at the candidates. Kamala cares. cares about kids and families, cares about America. Donald only cares about himself. On her first day in court, Kamala said 5 words that still guide her. Kamala Harris, for the people. That is something that Donald Trump will never understand. So it is no surprise, is it, that he is lying about Kamala's record. He's mocking her name and her laugh. Sounds familiar. But we have him on the run now. So, no matter what the polls say, we can't let up. We can't get driven down crazy conspiracy rabbit holes. We have to fight for the truth. We have to fight for Kamala as she will fight for us. Because you know what? It still takes a village to raise a family, heal a country, and win a campaign. And America needs every one of us, our energy, our talents, our dreams. We're not just electing a president, we're uplifting our nation. We're opening the promise of America wide enough for everyone. Together, we've put a lot of cracks in the highest, hardest glass ceiling. And tonight, so close to breaking through once and for all, I want to tell you what I see through all those cracks and why it matters for each and every one of us. What do I see? I see freedom. I see the freedom to make our own decisions about our health, our lives, our loves, our families. The freedom to work with dignity and prosper, to worship as we choose or not, to speak our minds freely and honestly. I see freedom from fear and intimidation, from violence and injustice, from chaos and corruption. I see the freedom to look our children in the eye and say, in America, you can go as far as your hard work and talent will take you, and mean it. And you know what? On the other side of that glass ceiling is Kamala Harris raising her hand and taking the oath of office as our 47th President of the United States. My friends, when a barrier falls for one of us, it falls. It falls and clears the way for all of us. So for the next 78 days, we need to work harder than we ever have. We need to beat back the dangers that Trump and his allies pose to the rule of law and our way of life. Don't get distracted or complacent. Talk to your friends and neighbors. Volunteer. Be proud champions for the truth and for the country that we all love. I want my grandchildren and their grandchildren to know I was here at this moment, that we were here, and that we were with Kamala Harris every step of the way. This is our time, America. This is when we stand up. This is when we break through. The future is here. It's in our grasp.
it's fair to say that we all stand on the shoulders of Hillary Clinton. So, I'm just checking. Are you ready to join this fight yet? Okay, that's the answer I was looking for. So I want you to text JOIN to 30330 and get involved. Now, what does fighting for the people exactly look like? Let's go back to 2011 when Kamala Harris was Attorney General of California. The housing crisis had devastated American families, and the big banks had forced Californians out of their homes. Well, Kamala Harris stood up to those banks, and she secured a $20 billion settlement for California families. That is fighting for the people. And that is something that our next speaker knows all about. Please welcome the fearless fighter from South Carolina, Congressman Jim Clyburn.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, and good evening. Thank you, South Carolina. Thank you. Four years ago, Americans were experiencing high anxieties and great uncertainties. A deadly virus raged, schools closed, businesses shuttered. Donald Trump mismanaged the crisis from day one, looking out for himself instead of the country. The American people responded to the crisis in leadership by electing new leaders. Thanks to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, we reopened our schools, brought back our businesses, and restored our faith in the American can-do spirit. Thanks to Joe and Kamala, we reduced the price of prescription drugs, repaired roads and bridges, and replaced lead pipes. Thanks to Joe and Kamala, we are honoring our heroes in uniform and expanded benefits to over 1 million veterans. Thanks to Joe and Kamala, Make It in America is no longer just a slogan, but a movement that is bringing millions of manufacturing jobs back to America. For President Biden's lifetime of achievement in service of his country, we owe him a great debt of gratitude. And we're all grateful for one of the best decisions he made, selecting Kamala Harris as his vice president and endorsing her to succeed him. I often say that we are but the sum of our experiences. In the introduction to my memoir, I wrote, "All my experiences have not been pleasant, but I consider all of them to be blessings." So has been the case with Kamala. Her experiences have prepared her for this moment. Kamala Harris is a true battle-tested leader, a district attorney, attorney general, senator, and vice president who gets things done. While Donald Trump has been bragging about how he overturned Roe, Kamala has been fiercely advocating for the respectation of reproduction freedoms. While Trump has been looking out for himself and his billionaire buddies, Kamala has been fighting to lower costs for all Americans. And while Trump falsely pleads ignorance of Project 2025, which in my opinion is Jim Crow 2.0, Kamala has been offering the American people enlightened proposals and visionary leadership. Having grown up in a parsonage, I often look to the good book for understanding and guidance. As 2 Corinthians informs, we are troubled on every side, yet not distressed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not forsaken. Cast down, but not destroyed. Our great democracy has been tested, and so has the basic goodness of the American people. But our resolve to remain a great country with freedom and justice for all will not falter. We will continue our march toward a more perfect union, united in our common purpose and emboldened by our resolve to elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz as the next president and vice president of these United States of America. Thank you and Godspeed.
That was South Carolina Congressman Jim Clyburn there taking the stage. The man who, we should recall, almost single-handedly turned around the presidential campaign of Joe Biden back in 2020, now making the case for the woman he hopes will succeed Biden in the White House, Kamala Harris. We're here with live PBS News coverage. We have analysis and more in-depth remarks coming up. But first, we want to go back down to the floor.
Laura Barone-Lopez on the convention floor with the delegate. Who are you with, Laura?
Jeff, hey, I'm here with Alec Hughes, 20-year-old, a University of Michigan student. Some of our viewers might be familiar with him because I sat down with him in Michigan a few months ago when Joe Biden was still the candidate in this race. And so, Alec, I wanted to start by asking you, how have things changed on the ground in Michigan?
Yeah, well, speaking from personal experience, I mean, since the ticket kind of changed hands from President Biden to Vice President Harris, I've had almost an overflow of students messaging me personally, whether it's incoming freshmen at the University of Michigan or people who are about to enter their senior year, tell me, how can I get involved? What can I do to help the campaign? Can I knock doors, call phones? And I mean, frankly, as far as I know, I don't think I've ever seen people get this excited, looking forward this much to the semester while it's still kind of the middle of the summer. So I'm getting a ton of enthusiasm.
And so before that, you were telling me that you and other students who were trying to organize voters were actually having trouble getting young voters to sign up and volunteer, right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think it's a fair assessment to say with President Biden as the presumptive nominee, with the age issue especially, it was hard to get students motivated. But now that it's switched over to Harris, people are more fired up than at least I think I've seen in my conscious life.
Are any of the young people that are signing up, have they told you if it's the first time they're really getting involved? I mean, were they maybe not going to vote at first and now they're deciding they are going to vote?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had many students. I mean, we have plenty of first-time voters coming to campus as well. People who were turning 18, even some I know days before Election Day, and they're very much excited. They're very much enthusiastic to get into it.
And one of the elements in Michigan when it comes to some of the voters is also the uncommitted movement. And some of them are warning that they think that Harris still hasn't done enough to win their vote. What are you hearing from people your age about the Israel-Hamas war and the issues there and what they want to hear from Harris?
Yeah, I mean, I think, dialogue is really the only solution. There's You know, we have meetings on campus every week. We've had meetings in the past semester, before the summer, about the Israel-Palestine conflict, and we've invited students from all across the spectrum to the table to talk, to have big discussions, and I think it's really been productive. But of course, at the same time, I think we really have to remember that there are multiple issues at stake here in this election, and especially with, you know, as big of a tent we have at the Democratic Party, there's, whether it's climate change, whether it's, you know, defending democracy, we have issues all across the spectrum that are motivating people.
Thank you, Alec. Well, Jeff, you heard it, that Alec said that previously it was a lot harder to get young voters to even volunteer, and that now they're getting a lot of attention on their campus at University of Michigan.
Laura Barone-Lopez. Laura, thanks so much. Let's return to our panel and welcome in our very own Judy Woodruff. It's great to see you this evening.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Quite a lot of noise happening in this place.
Indeed, indeed. And we should say that Amy Walter still here with us alongside David Brooks and Jonathan Capehart. So, Judy, reflect on all that we've heard this evening.
Well, you have a fired up group of delegates, and I don't remember the total count, but we know there are more delegates to a Democratic convention than there are to a Republican convention, and they were making a lot of noise in Milwaukee. I think it's fair to say there's even more of it tonight. I think you are seeing, I mean, we know this is the night to say thank you to Joe Biden for the gesture that he made to take himself out of running for re-election. We're going to hear from him in a little bit. I think you are watching the launch of what's going to be a fired-up campaign. I mean, you're seeing what we didn't show just now, but what the audience has seen a little bit of is these very negative videos zeroing in on Donald Trump, painting the picture of a president who has convicted felon and the rest of it, even talking about his accusations about sexual abuse. It's been tough, but a lot of it, and we just heard this from Hillary Clinton, is pointing a finger at what Kamala Harris can represent. And by the way, the Hillary Clinton, the fact that she's even here 8 years after she beat Donald Trump in the popular vote, by 2 percentage points, a lot of history there. I think you're seeing an energetic kickoff to this campaign.
Judy, reflect on that moment that when Hillary Clinton came out, because we saw Vice President Harris come out earlier and the room absolutely erupted. It was a sustained standing ovation for Hillary Clinton from everyone in this room. And there was a clear connective tissue being drawn in her remarks there, which went back even earlier to, the legacy of President Biden and what we're going to hear from him. This went back to her campaign. She went back to Geraldine Ferraro. She went back to Shirley Chisholm. Reflect on those remarks for a moment and how they went over here.
Well, it went over big. I mean, I don't know what the gender breakdown here is, but everybody in this arena, I think it's fair to say, was cheering the Hillary Clinton message that, yes, women have tried, and they've tried. A woman ran in 72, as you said. Jerry Ferraro was the vice presidential nominee, and Hillary Clinton herself 8 years ago. But she said, finally, the future is now. Now it's time. Let's go fight. Let's go win this. I think, it's fair to say there's still a number of Americans who are conflicted about whether they're going to vote for a woman in 2024. But if anybody's making the case for it, it is Hillary Clinton, and we're going to hear it. We're certainly going to hear it tonight from Joe Biden and from Kamala Harris herself in 3 nights.
It's an interesting point because it strikes me that the speaker lineup tonight in particular really reflects the generations of pioneers who have helped break down barriers, gender, and even in terms of race. We didn't see him in prime time, but Jesse Jackson opened this convention tonight. He appeared. He has Parkinson's. He didn't speak. But he ran unsuccessfully for the Democratic nomination back in 1984. Your great point about Hillary Clinton. What's interesting to me is that Kamala Harris doesn't really speak openly about her historic potential. In many ways, you could argue because she doesn't have to, because there are so many other Democrats who will do that for her and have that experience.
Absolutely. And you all talked about this earlier tonight. This is a convention where you're seeing the whole of the Democratic Party. I mean, going back, former President Clinton is going to speak. Former President Obama is going to speak. Unlike the Republican convention where you didn't see, it was as if it was, and I think one of you said, this is the party of Trump. I think Amy said, it's not the Republican Party that we've come to see at a convention. This is a convention celebrating what Democrats stand for. It's bringing Democrats together. They're celebrating the history of what the party stands for. They're not turning away from it, which is what you saw in Milwaukee. That was a convention turning away from everything that the Republican Party was, from Ronald Reagan, from George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush, who's still alive and who didn't show up at that convention. This is an embracing, maybe not of everything Democrats have ever stood for, but certainly for a lot of what Democrats stood for and are standing for today. There's a unity here at this convention you didn't see.
And Jonathan, that unity is clearly directed at the Republican ticket, right? This is Democrats unified against a Republican opponent here in the Trump-Vance ticket. It also strikes me that they featured a number of speakers tonight, some of whom, like Representative Ocasio-Cortez, who were really standing by President Biden up until the final moments that he decided to end his re-election bid. Grace Meng among them as well. She had used phrasing like she thought that he was being bullied to leave his re-election bid. I wonder what you make of that, whether there's some intentional messaging behind that, too, to say even whatever problems we have within the party, those are now gone. We're all moving forward in the same direction.
Right. That's exactly it. What's interesting about this convention, and I mentioned this in Milwaukee, that I found it interesting after going to 6 Republican conventions. It was the first time I'd been in a hall and not heard "we Republicans believe," or "we the Republican Party," or "the Republican Party stands for this." And here in Chicago, Mayor Karen Bass came out and said, hello, Democrats. You've had Secretary Clinton came out and talked about, we Democrats. It is this thing where it's not about any one person. It is about the party and what the party believes and what the party stands for. And on top of that, it is then opening their arms out to anyone out there who wants what the Democrats stand for, what the Democrats want to push for. In Milwaukee, it was the complete opposite. They didn't care if you wanted to join their cult. If you were for Donald Trump, hey, that's fine, but we're good without you. And the message here on this very first night is thank you, Joe Biden. You did a wonderful thing. We are now rallying around Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. And just about every speaker has said, but this is not going to be easy. We must come together and we must elect them. The fight is on.
So, David, building on Jonathan's point, is that because the draw for Republicans is centered on personality, whereas for Democrats, personality, yes, but also policy. Policy and a unifying principle.
Yeah, I don't agree with Jonathan on this one. We've got a country. I'm not sure I disagree, but let me make that counter case. We've got a country that hates the two parties. People are fleeing from the two parties in droves. The number of independents is going up. People want something different. 59% say the country's heading in the wrong direction. Maybe it's higher, 70 or 80, maybe a huge number, heading in the wrong direction. So you could say the opposite case would be the Republican Party said, we hear you, and we are totally revamping our party. We're going to be a working class party. We're going to have union leaders here on our first night, and J.D. Vance is going to sort of represent something new. And that first night of the Republican convention in Milwaukee, it was interesting. It was sort of new. And the Democrats could be saying, we're just fine. And we're going to take all the Democrats you've ever heard of, and they're just going to line up and they're going to speak it all out. And we love our party. Of course they do. At conventions, people love their parties. But if it's in a country where people are souring on the two parties, then it's at least somewhat problematic. Now, let me make a counter-argument to what I just said, just to close.
So you can't come back.
Okay, so I'll climb down off my...
That's one say that people really want change, and they don't want to see the same old lineup of politicians. On the other thing, going up through the last couple of Biden years, Biden was running behind. But there was this creature called generic Democrat who was doing well. And it could be what the Democrats have said, let's get back to generic Democrat. And we had it in 2022, we had it in 2020, just generic Democrat, the Democrat that everybody sort of agrees with, and that's our anti-Trump wall. So that would be the case for doing what they're doing. But I could see the country's in a radical move. Maybe don't run up your whole 30 years, your whole party. I can see making that case too.
Jonathan, I see you scribbling notes. We'll come back to you in a second while you get your thoughts together. But
I'm ready.
I do want to, Judy, I want to get your take on some of this because we spoke about this a little bit earlier as well, and actually with Anita Dunn when she was here too, former senior advisor to President Biden, now running a pro-Harris super PAC. But we talked about, the fact that this is essentially Kamala Harris now becoming the default leader of the Democratic Party. What does that mean for President Biden? What kind of role does he have moving forward? In some ways, this is a party moving away
from him.
And
moving away from his generation. Kamala Harris is 59 years old. She's chosen a running mate who I think is just a few months older than she is, and Tim Walz. It's a new generation. No, they're not 20-year-olds. But 20-some years younger than President Biden. It is a different generation, and we don't know everything she wants to be or do as president. I mean, she's really only begun to fill in just the outline of what she wants to represent, what she wants to say and do as president. That's what we're all going to be listening to here on Thursday night. So she's got a fair amount of filling in to do, and there's an interesting debate going on right now among strategists about how much she ought to say. It may be in her interest to say as little as possible. And the question is how much are voters going to demand or expect of her. But I think we're definitely turning the page. I mean, to David's point, it's the Democratic Party, but it's going to be the party where Kamala Harris and Tim Walz take it if they are elected. And we don't know. There's a big question mark behind that door.
When you talk about that generational shift, can we talk about Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is, 30 years younger or 50 years younger than Joe Biden, but who her elevation and evolution, I think, has been so striking because she has found a way to blend populism and pragmatism and blend protest and power. And she got one of the most raucous receptions when she took the stage tonight. I mean, Jonathan, what do you think of her just elevation, her arc, and just the time that she's been elected?
She is that brand of politician that I find fascinating in this regard. She was someone who was out there on the barricades, protesting. She ran against an entrenched congressional Democratic veteran that she got tired of it and decided to just go and run. And I think she said in her speech, she was surprised she won. And if there's a video of her finding out, watching the video, that she had won the race to her own surprise. What I find fascinating is that she was then able to take that protester's energy and then translate it into legislative power. And not everyone who goes from the streets to the halls of power make it. You look at outgoing Congressman Cori Bush, outgoing Congressman Jamal Bowman. What you do on the barricades doesn't necessarily work once you get in the halls of power. And Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez was very smart. She got in there. She did the work. The first 2 years, she was all over the place. She gets reelected, and then you almost didn't see her again because she would put her head down and she did the work, and she found herself some mentors in the Democratic caucus who were willing to work with her, and she was willing to listen to them. And what's happened is you are seeing what we saw tonight was an incredibly effective speaker, someone who's popular within the party, but also someone who has a legislative track record that she can say, here, this is what I've done. This is how you do it.
For all the leaders we've seen who occupy more senior ranks among the caucus, of course, we've saw Congressman Clyburn and Raskin, and of course Secretary Clinton. We're also seeing, Amy, sort of these rising stars of the party. Jasmine Crockett on the stage right now, among them, the Congresswoman from Texas, who has been one of the more vocal backers of the Harris-Walz campaign.
Not just a vocal backer, but a vocal opponent of Donald Trump and of other Republicans in Congress. She has many viral moments thanks to her comments both on the floor and in committee. Can I just go back to Hillary Clinton for a second? Yeah. Because I thought what is really fascinating is we're having this conversation about forwards, backwards, the party changing, not changing. So the last time I was here for a convention, it's 1996. Hillary Clinton is here, of course, as the First Lady. Thinking through what the Clinton administration was boasting about as they went into that re-election, Democrats can't talk about any of that now, right? We had a crime bill. There was the Don't Ask, Don't Tell, right? Thinking about
welfare
all
reform.
the issues, welfare reform. None of those things could make anyone in this room happy, right? No one could promote that. 20 years later, she goes and gets the nomination, again, distancing herself from much of that. And now here she is, just 8 years later, pushing another woman forward to the job that she came this close to getting. So I find her just as a sort of a fascinating example of a party that has moved and changed. Now, she has stayed with it through those changes. There are others, as we know, who were Clinton Democrats who are now moving into Republicans, those people, especially in small town rural America, who've now shifted over to Republicanism. But it's also a party here that has a lot of members that don't remember anything about and weren't particularly excited about voting for or supporting Hillary Clinton because they saw her as not part of the sort of leading edge, which Kamala Harris is able to embody. So I find all of this is just something of a fascinating story of the Democratic Party, where it's come, where it's going through just the arc of Hillary Clinton and her role at all of these conventions. The only thing I would add, excellent point, is that seeing these women who've been so demonized by the Republican Party, Hillary Clinton, an object of more than scorn. I mean, she was Satan. Nancy Pelosi, we haven't seen her yet. We'll see her later this week. Certainly Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez demonized, and they're doing it now to Kamala Harris. I mean, the language former President Trump is using to describe her in the last few days, it just gets, by the day, it gets darker and darker. So I'm reminded of how women in particular have been, frankly, characterized in a really ugly way by the other party. I think it's something to think about. I mean, I think about Republican women who haven't. I mean, I think of Elizabeth Dole, who ran for president back in the 90s, and other. I don't remember the opposite thing happening. I stand corrected if one of you can.
Sarah Palin.
Well, no.
Okay, thank you, Sarah Palin.
Oh, sure.
But it does raise an interesting point, which you flicked at earlier, and I think we were all sort of hovering around as well, which is, as Amy so eloquently navigated the arc of just Hillary Clinton's career over these last 20-odd years. The question still remains, in 2024, is America ready to elect a woman president?
Hillary Clinton would say, I did get the most popular votes. It's just that doesn't count in our electoral system, which is increasingly moving in the Republican direction.
Does Kamala Harris, though, benefit from this shortened campaign? Because it makes it harder to define her negatively when you only really have 80 days left in less than 80 days left in the calendar.
And they are really, that's what the Trump campaign has been doing. They've been kind of trying different things. They haven't really zeroed in exactly, found that perfect message, but they seem to be honing in on that, which is connect her as much as possible to Biden, make her just as responsible for what's happened on the economy, what's happened on the border as Biden, and then, basically call her just too liberal, much more liberal than Biden, so that she's going to take the country, if she does take it in a different direction than Biden, it's going to be much more to the left. But as we've discussed over and over again, even though the messaging from the campaign has been focused, the ads go right at that. The candidate himself, not as much. I think what's also really important is that, Trump is very well defined, and she's not. So if indeed this election is about Trump and things that people remember about Donald Trump that they don't like, she has that ability to win.
And we're at a point now in the program where I just want to note what's happening on the stage. They are featuring everyday Americans who've been impacted by restrictions on abortion access in different parts of the country. We'll dip into that in just a moment. But David, this is a great chance to bring you in on this because it does beg the question of how much of an issue this one issue will continue to be in this upcoming election. We saw the impact that having abortion access on the ballot had in the midterms in 2022. We know Democrats are working hard to get it on the ballot in a number of states, and it is so in a number of key battleground states already. And Republicans don't really have a unified message around it, certainly not the presidential candidate in Donald Trump. How much of an impact are stories like this on stage right now and this issue going to have?
Yeah, there are very few elections that are provable vote getters, and this is a provable vote getter. And so one of the things that's interesting about the party, I thought the two best speeches today so far were AOC and Shawn Fain, the UAW leader. And they were pretty rip-roaring, left-wing populist speeches, taking on corporate greed. This is that party. Young progressive unions, that's part of this party. But this is also a suburban, well-educated, affluent party. I would say mostly a suburban, well-educated. And the abortion issue is an issue that really mobilizes people, I mean, across, but especially in that demographic. And so somehow you've got to be both those things, both those parts of the party. And I would say so far Harris is probably correctly dovetailing toward issues like abortion, child care, family paid leave, because frankly the AOC, that wing, as much as I find it very energizing, does it play in suburban Arizona? Does it play in suburban Michigan? I'm not quite sure. I think she's safer to go with these core issues that are just proven winners for the Democrats.
There was that one line that we heard from the Congresswoman where she said, Kamala Harris is for the middle class because she's from the middle class. That could resonate with those voters that you're talking about.
It could, absolutely, though I've probably heard that at every Democratic convention in my lifetime. So,
Jonathan, weigh in on this issue for us.
Actually, you know, the vice president is from the middle class. I mean, we've seen the videos, and I've seen the pushback on that. It's like, what, you know, one parent was a Stanford professor, and the other one was a cancer researcher. Does that make someone automatically wealthy, not in the middle class? No. It just means that they have a fancy job that, you know, does perhaps some important things, especially the cancer researcher. But I think that, you know, using that as a knock against her, I don't know if it's going to work. Just like I don't think Republicans' tired attack that, oh, they're liberals, or, oh, they're socialists. I'm not sure that's going to work. And back to, David, something you said before. This is what I was scribbling before. When, David, you were saying the generic Democrat back in the midterms. Well, maybe the generic Democrat was winning back then because abortion was an issue then. And abortion is an issue that we're seeing is an effective issue across the political spectrum. If Ruby Red Kansas can enshrine abortion rights in its constitution, then that should have been the signal right then and there to Republicans, you've got a problem. And instead, they're continuing to drive this issue. There's a reason why this is a ballot initiative on, I think it's 8 states now, as you said, Amna, in key battleground states. And we will see in November if Republicans, you know, what's the phrase, reap the whirlwind, or yes, reap the whirlwind by getting rid of Roe v. Wade.
Well, former President Trump's trying to walk away from the issue, saying he doesn't have a strong, isn't pushing a national ban on abortion, that he's happy to leave it up to the states. He's trying to walk away from it. But his party and, you know, 99, I don't know what percent, but a big portion of the Republican Party, certainly what we heard at the Republican convention, is, you know, they are not happy with the Dobbs decision. They want to go further. Yeah.
And one thing, you know, they say that, you know, oh, no, don't worry, there won't be a national abortion ban. There won't be a national abortion ban. They can effectively put one in place without ever sending legislation to his desk by enforcing the Comstock Act from the 1800s, which is a law that no one's bothered to enforce. But if Donald Trump is elected, he's going to put in someone in the Justice Department who's going to suddenly decide, well, it's the law of the land, so we must enforce it. There is where you get your national abortion ban.
You know, what's interesting, too, if you are looking at the down ballot races and what Republicans are advertising on right now, in so many of these states, key battleground states, Republicans are playing defense on abortion. They're bringing their wives to camera. They're talking about, well, I'm not really what you think I am. I'm actually more moderate on this issue.
Mark Robinson in North Carolina did that.
Well, Mark Robinson, who's been the most extreme on that issue. But we've seen it in Nevada. We're seeing it in New Hampshire, where, again, what the other parties, whatever party is thinking by watching what they're putting on TV. And the fact that they are now talking defensively about abortion here in late August of an election year tells you that they still see that as a liability. Now, for Trump, the benefit he does have, at least what we've seen in polling, is that people don't necessarily see him as tied to the extreme elements as some of these, say, Senate candidates or House candidates. So in that way, it may be easier for Trump, who has said, I don't think abortion's a big issue in this election. It's not going to be a big issue. He may get something of a pass in a way that those other Republican down ballot candidates don't.
Let's return now to the convention stage because Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear is set to speak. He was on the vice presidential shortlist. Here he is now.
Hadley Duvall is one of the bravest people I've ever met. I'm amazed at the courage it takes to share her pain, to share her truth. Yet Donald Trump brags about tearing a constitutional right away from Hadley and every other woman and girl in our country. That's why we must tear away any chance he can ever be president ever again. In 21 states, Trump's actions have resulted in extreme bans on abortion in my state, even in cases of rape, incest, and non-viable pregnancies. That leaves 12-year-old girls like Hadley with no options. That fails any test of humanity, any test of basic decency, any test of whether you have any underlying empathy. Thankfully, this extremism is being soundly rejected all over our country. In Kentucky, we put reproductive freedom on the ballot last November, and I beat Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell's hand-picked candidate by more than 5 percentage points. This November, we're going to beat them again. Elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz and protect reproductive freedom. Folks, Donald Trump appointed the Supreme Court justices who got us into this mess. His Project 2025 goes even further. Here's the thing. Trump and Vance simply don't believe in your freedom. Trump says people are absolutely thrilled that women have their basic rights eliminated. J.D. Vance says women should stay in violent marriages and that pregnancies resulting from rape are simply inconvenient. Their policies give rapists more rights than their victims. That's not inconvenient, it's just plain wrong. And a woman grieving a non-viable pregnancy shouldn't be required to carry it to term just to listen to her child die or to hear no sound at all. All women should have the freedom to make their own decisions. freedom over their own bodies, freedom about whether to pursue IVF, freedom about whether to have children at all. How we treat people transcends party lines. It goes right to the heart of who we are. My faith teaches me the golden rule that I am to love my neighbor as myself. In the parable of the Good Samaritan says we are all each other's neighbors. So I want anyone watching tonight, Republican, Independent, Democrat, to know that you are welcome here. We believe in an America where we live out our values, end anger politics once and for all, and move beyond this us versus them by remembering we are all Americans. That's how Joe Biden and Kamala Harris lead. They both called to ask how they could help Kentucky in recovering from natural disasters. They helped us improve our roads, our bridges, and invested in our people. They didn't ask me who Kentuckians voted for. They asked me what Kentuckians needed, and folks, they delivered. Kamala Harris gets it. She knows we must move beyond anger, extremism, and division, that everyone has dignity and deserves respect. America, we're going to win. And we're going to win by staying true to our values of compassion, empathy, and doing right by our neighbors. I'm so proud to be all in for the next President of the United States, Kamala Harris. Thank you.
Vice President Harris there watching on as Governor Andy Beshear of Kentucky wrapped up his remarks here on the Democratic National Convention stage, night one here in Chicago. Our Laura Barone-Lopez has been down on the convention floor talking to delegates, getting their reaction to the speakers all night. Laura, give us a sense of the mood in the crowd now. We've got a few more speakers to go, and of course, the headliner tonight, President Biden, still to come.
That's right, Amna. Look, some of the biggest applause lines tonight, other than when Kamala Harris came out herself, which the whole arena just lit up when she came out, but was when Hillary Clinton, the former Secretary of State, was speaking. Delegates and everyone here in the arena really just got on their feet and were extremely excited to listen to Hillary Clinton. And she delivered some of the biggest applause lines of the night, especially when she was talking more forward-looking, saying that that Kamala Harris would move the country forward, specifically for people interested in protecting reproductive rights. And after her, then some of the biggest applause lines came during Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's speech, especially as she was talking about Kamala Harris fighting for the middle class and really trying to draw that contrast between Donald Trump and Harris when it comes to fighting for everyday Americans on the economy, and pointing out that Harris is going to really try to make things more affordable, whether it's housing or also other consumer goods.
Laura, can I follow up on that in the moment when Secretary Clinton was speaking, because she had a line in there about working towards something that we have worked towards and dreamed of for a long time. The subtext there, of course, was that she was on the cusp of becoming the first female president of the United States. Here, Democrats are again trying to elect another woman. And I just wonder, for the women around you in the room there, how lines like that resonated.
Well, it really resonated with them, Amna. And one thing I've been asking people here tonight, as well as in the lead up to this convention, specifically women, delegates, women across the Democratic Party, as well as women voters, is whether or not they think that the country is ready for a woman president, let alone a woman who is Black and South Asian. And a lot of them believe that the country is ready, despite the fact that in 2016 Hillary Clinton lost, and despite the fact that they are well aware of the fact that Donald Trump has made repeated attacks questioning Kamala Harris's Black identity, talking about her appearance and her her looks, and talking about that a lot repeatedly on the campaign trail. Trump has done. Despite all of that, the women that I talked to say that they think that it's time for a woman president, and that they think that because of the issues that she is running on, be it reproductive health care and abortion rights, as well as protecting democracy, that they think that she could actually win this.
Laura, how is the Harris campaign viewing this? Because we were talking earlier, and I made the point that Vice President Harris herself doesn't often speak publicly about her own historic potential, being the first woman elected, the first Black and South Asian woman elected, in large part because there are other Democrats who will tell that story for her. How is the campaign thinking about approaching that?
Well, they're thinking about it a lot the way you just referred to it, Jeff, which is that it's self-evident. You look at Kamala Harris and you see that she is Black and she is South Asian and she is a woman. And so they really feel as though, the people in the campaign that I talked to, that it speaks for itself, and that ultimately she should be talking about the issues, the ones that they think are the most salient with voters, the ones that they think will get voters out. And prior to even being the nominee, as you all know, she was the campaign's main voice on abortion. And that's something that she's leaned into even more than President Joe Biden did, because of the fact that he wasn't as comfortable talking about abortion when he was president and even prior to becoming president. And so they really view it as other people can talk about that. And when I was talking to some voters here in Chicago prior to the convention kicking off, they also said, some Black women voters that I spoke to said that they don't think that Harris needs to address it directly, that they see it in her, and they also like the fact that just by seeing her running, they feel as though they're heard more, and that there's someone now at the top of the ticket that truly embodies who they are and the types of experiences that they've had.
Laura, this is very much a convention to elect Kamala Harris, right? This is why the Democrats have gathered here, but we know the focus for tonight. We've heard from so many speakers as well say thank you to the current sitting president, Joe Biden. I'm curious, among any of the delegates, folks down there on the floor that you've talked to, what are they saying about what they want to hear from President Biden tonight?
Well, they want President Biden to basically have his time in the spotlight. And so that they want to hear President Biden talk about what he was able to do during his time in office. And it may not have been as long as he wanted. We know that even towards the end, when he was making this decision to drop out of the race, that he was really thinking, even up until the end, that he could actually win in November, but that ultimately, as people were coming to him across the party saying that they thought that he could hurt their down ballot chances, he decided it was time to step back. But they also want to hear him talk about exactly why he thinks Harris is the good person to hand this off to, why he thinks she can win, and the arguments that they're hoping that she will make to the American public.
Do we know, Laura, how the campaign intends to sort of leverage President Biden as a surrogate in the weeks to come? I know after he speaks tonight, he goes to a long-planned family trip in California. What comes after that?
Well, they do expect to have him out on the campaign trail. And we saw a little bit of this a week or so ago, Jeff, where Harris went out onto the campaign trail with President Biden, specifically to speak to some older voters in a swing state. And so they really could leverage him, and they talk about doing this when speaking to senior voters, older voters, because of the fact that as a lot of the different voting blocs within the Democratic coalition were starting to pull away from Joe Biden, Latino voters, young voters, one of the voting blocs that stuck with him were senior voters. And so that is especially an area where they think that they could utilize him, as well as Republican voters. There were a lot of Republican voters who were disenchanted with their party, who were voting based on things like January 6th and their fears that Trump was going to terminate the Constitution, which Donald Trump had said that he thought should be done. And that those voters were rallying behind Joe Biden this time around. And one of the big questions was whether or not they would also rally around Kamala Harris. And so those are the kinds of voters also that Joe Biden could be used to speak to on the campaign trail.
That is our Laura Barone-Lopez reporting live from the convention floor here in Chicago. Laura, thank you. Folks, we're keeping an eye on the stage as well as Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock is speaking. But back up here in our booth, Amy, I'd love to bring you in on this point Laura was just touching on, which is to say you would expect the sitting current president to be able to go out and campaign for Vice President Harris. When you look at the races at stake right now, where could President Biden make the most difference? Where could he have an impact that helps Harris and also could help down ballot? Pennsylvania,
well,
I guess.
That's quite a challenging question to answer because he is simply much more unpopular right now than Harris is in both the national polling and in those different states. Now, there is something to be said about a Joe Biden going to Scranton and Joe Biden going home and making the case for Harris in those places where she's not as well known, where he had, sort of a trusted brand. At the same time, even in Pennsylvania, you look at where he was polling a month ago, where she is now. She's 4 or 5 points down. She's tied to a point or so ahead. So, again, this is like this awkward dance. We're going to be talking about a lot of being close to President Biden, being supportive of the president. He's still the sitting president, and yet making sure her biggest asset right now, to continue to lean into, is I am turning the page. I am a new generation.
Biden advisors.
Right, and her
now,
team is
right.
Yeah. You can't be not part of the administration. I think she's trying to distance herself, let's be clear, from the administration. She's not saying I am absolutely 180-degree difference from the person that I ran with and served as their vice president. But campaigning is a totally different story. You are still governing together. That doesn't mean that you're going to take him out on the trail in the same way you would bring some of these voices that are up right now. Raphael Warnock to campaign with her in Georgia, probably going to be a better surrogate than the current president.
Judy, it's such a delicate tightrope to walk here, right?
It is. I would venture to say, without hearing this directly from anybody, that one thing that the Harris campaign would love is if President Biden would bring home a ceasefire in the Middle East right now between Gaza and Israel. And we know that Secretary of State Blinken is over there right now working with Netanyahu. The reporting is that former President Trump is on the phone with the Prime Minister of Israel, urging him not to cut a deal right now because it's believed that would help the Harris campaign. So I don't know where that, I don't know, who knows whether that will come about or not. But I have to think that the Harris campaign would like for President Biden to do what presidents do, which is work on that one. And maybe there's some other domestic issues that, they'd like to see come home.
David, there is this this moment here, this tension where really the successes of President Biden can become the successes of Vice President Harris, but she has the ability to distance herself, if she chooses to, from the challenges or the perceived failures of this president as she runs her campaign moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, vice presidents have a very mixed record running for the office to be president. President Mondale, President Gore, I think even Mike Pence ran an alleged campaign for president, which didn't go very far. So it is a tricky dance. Hubert Humphrey really struggled with getting sucked into the Lyndon Johnson Vietnam War, and he never got out of it. But one thing I think Joe Biden can really help her. Anita Dunn said something very interesting here, which was she has to decide which direction she wants to take America forward. What exactly does that mean? And if Anita Dunn doesn't know, well, none of the rest of us are going to know. But she has to fill that in, and I think she has to fill it in with policies. And one way Joe Biden can help, of course, it didn't help him defend himself, but I can say, I brought you the CHIPS Act. That Micron plant you like, I helped bring that. The Intel plant you like, I helped bring that. The The infrastructure bill, I helped bring that. So he does bring a lot of policy chops, and he can say, this is what the Democratic Party should do for you. And maybe he didn't like it for me because I'm old. It's not going to phrase it that way, maybe. But this is where we're headed as a party. And here are the next steps, and then Kamala Harris can say, here are steps 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And that's what we're moving forward. But she still has to fill in that what do you think that would look like if you were to stake out a frown on some issues where there is daylight between how she sees things and how the current president does? Well, I'm sort of curious to know where that daylight is.
I mean, it's the Biden-Harris administration. And in some ways, you know, they agree on a whole hell of a lot. I think what we will see is a total difference and an emphasis difference. We're seeing it in how they both go about, talking about the Israel-Hamas war, where the vice president, in all of her comments, policy-wise, they are in lockstep. But emphasis, she always makes a point of talking about the losses among the Palestinians in Gaza and the need for humanitarian aid and assistance. And I think that's where we will see changes between her and him. I mean, if you're the vice president of the United States and you've got this economy, why would you run away from the president? I mean, on paper, by the numbers, by the stats, it's an incredible economy. But what we have seen her say on the campaign trail is things are great.
I ain't got a huge house, I rent a room in the house. Listen, baby, girl. I ain't got a motor boat, but I can float for days. So listen, baby, girl. Once you get a dose of dope, you gon' want some more. So listen, baby, girl. When I make it, I want you back. Want you back, yeah, baby, girl. I don't got a huge house, I rent a room in the house. Listen, baby, girl. I ain't got a motor boat, but I can float your boat. So listen, baby, girl. Once you get a dose of dope, you gon' want some more. So listen, baby, girl. When I make it, I want you back. Want you back, yeah.
Good evening, folks. Good evening, America. Good evening, Chicago. Are there any Democrats in the room tonight? Folks, we are on the verge of making history. We are on the verge of an historic election. And I want to talk with you for just a few minutes about my dear friend, our president, Joe Biden. Joe Biden's mom had a saying: you are defined by your courage and you are redeemed by your loyalty. 4 years ago, I had the honor of helping introduce Joe Biden to our national convention. I spoke about Joe's faith, his love of family, his determination to restore the soul of our nation. Back in 2020, America was nearly flat on our back from a deadly pandemic, an economic collapse, and then in January, an assault on our democracy. All of this, because the drama and chaos of our former president had knocked us down. But folks, Joe Biden's courage, Joe Biden's faith in us, Joe Biden's determination to heal the soul of our nation gave us hope and gave us confidence. Someone who has himself been knocked down by life time and again. Joe Biden knows the grit and determination of the American people. He believed in us, and Joe Biden helped us get back up again. Using the incredible skills he developed in many years in the U.S. Senate, Joe got passed and signed into law the most consequential legislation of any president in 60 years, helping our veterans, advancing gun safety, cutting prescription drug prices, fighting climate change, rebuilding bridges and broadband, bringing manufacturing back to America. Together, Joe and Kamala helped rebuild our economy from the middle up, from the bottom up, and the middle out, not from the top down. And they made our families safer and our country stronger at home and abroad. Today, we are so much better off because they believed in us, in our democracy. And our incredible First Lady, Jill Biden, our incredible First Lady, Jill Biden, our incredible First Lady, Jill Biden, was at Joe's side every step of the way, fighting for education, advancing the cancer moonshot, determined to improve women's health care, honoring military families. Joe and Jill together, you have done so much for us. And there's so much more you will do and we can do together.
You left me with a
Mr. President, thank you. Thank you for elevating a great leader in Kamala Harris. Vice President Harris, thank you for choosing a great running mate with a heart for the middle class like yours in Sergeant, Congressman, Coach, Governor Tim Walz. I have hope to you. I have hope to you. I have hope to you. And it is in no small part because of Joe Biden. I have never known a more compassionate man than Joe Biden. I have never known a man who has taken from his own loss and his own faith and delivered so much for the future of so many others. Mr. President, you were my senator as a Delawarean. You are my president as an American. You will always be mine. On behalf of our nation, Joe, for your courage in fighting for our democracy, we thank you. On behalf of our Democratic Party, for your loyalty in fighting for our democratic values, we thank you. And on behalf of Delaware, thank you, Joe, and God bless you. We love you. We love Joe. We love Joe. We love Joe. We love Joe. Thank you all. We love Joe. God bless you, and thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Vivian Werwell, and I'm a 4th grade student at Christopher College. I've been bouncing around all week excited for this moment, and last night I could barely sleep. I remember the day that we heard that President Biden had won, and the whole neighborhood started celebrating. So when I heard you were coming, I really wanted to love you. I adore you because you embrace change from my generation. And the ones who come, I look up to you.
Surpassed the United States. They haven't noticed. No one's saying that now. So keep working. Bring hostages home. End the war in Gaza. And bring peace and security to the Middle East. As you know, 2 days ago, I put forward a proposal that's brought us closer to doing that than we've done since October 7th. We're working around the clock, my Secretary of State, to prevent a wider war and reunite hostages with their families and surge humanitarian health and food assistance into Gaza now. To end the civilian suffering of the Palestinian people. And finally deliver a ceasefire and end this war. Those protesters out in the street, they have a point. A lot of innocent people are being killed on both sides. Just as we worked around the clock to bring home wrongfully detained Americans and others from Russia in one of the most complicated swaps in history, but they're home. Kamala and I are going to keep working to bring all Americans wrongfully detained around the world home. I mean it. Folks, I've got 5 months left in my presidency. I've got a lot to do. I intend to get it done. It's been the honor of my lifetime to serve as your president. I love the job, but I love my country more. I love my country more. And all this talk about how I'm angry at all those people who said I should step down, that's not true. I love my country more, and we need to preserve our democracy. In 2024, we need you to vote. We need you to keep the Senate. We need you to win back the House of Representatives. And above all, we need you to beat Donald Trump. And elect Kamala and Tim President and Vice President of the United States of America. Look, they'll continue to lead America forward, creating more jobs, standing up for workers, growing the economy, lower the cost to American families so they just have a little more breathing room. We've made incredible progress. We have more work to do. And Kamala and Tim will continue to take on corporate greed and bring down cost of food. They'll keep taking on Big Pharma and making insulin $35 a month, not just for seniors, but for everyone in America. And capping prescription drug costs a total of $2,000, not just for seniors, but for everyone. And folks, that's going to save America again tens of billions of dollars. Folks, they'll make housing more affordable, building 3 million new homes, providing $25,000 down payment assistance for the first-time home buyer, more than the 10 we approved. Donald Trump wants a new tax on imported goods, food, gas, clothing, and more. You know what that will cost the average family, according to the experts? $3,900 a year in a tax. No, it's a fact. Kamala and Tim will make the child care tax credit permanent. Lifting millions of children out of poverty and helping millions of families get ahead. But you know what Trump has? He created the largest debt any president had in 4 years with his $2 trillion tax cut for the wealthy. Well, Trump has a new plan. I love my country more, and we need to preserve our democracy. In 2024, we need you to vote. We need you to keep the Senate. We need you to win back the House of Representatives. And above all, we need you to beat Donald Trump. See, it's been the honor of my lifetime to serve as your president. I love the job, but I love my country more. I love my country more. And all this talk about how I'm angry at all those people who said I should step down, that's not true. I love my country more, and we need to preserve our democracy. In 2024, we need you to vote. We need you to keep the Senate. We need you to win back the House of Representatives. And above all, we need you to beat Donald Trump. And elect Kamala and Tim, President and Vice President of the United States of America. Look, they'll continue to lead America forward, creating more jobs, standing up for workers, growing the economy, lower the cost to American families so they just have a little more breathing room. We've made incredible progress, but we have more work to do. And Kamala and Tim will continue to take on corporate greed and bring down cost of food. They'll keep taking on Big Pharma, making insulin $35 a month, not just for seniors, but for everyone in America. And capping prescription drug costs at a total of $2,000, not just for seniors, but for everyone. And folks, that's going to save America again tens of billions of dollars. Folks, they'll make housing more affordable, building 3 million new homes, providing $25,000 down payment assistance for the first-time home buyer, more than the 10 we approved. Donald Trump wants a new tax on imported goods, food, gas, clothing, and more. You know what that will cost the average family, according to the experts? $3,900 a year in a tax. No, it's a fact. Kamala and Tim will make the child care tax credit permanent. Lifting millions of children out of poverty and helping millions of families get ahead. But you know what Trump has? He created the largest debt any president had in 4 years with his $2 trillion tax cut for the wealthy. Well, Trump has a new plan. He wants to provide a $5 billion tax cut for corporations and the very wealthy. Read it. Put us further in debt. And folks, you know we have 1,000 billionaires in America. You know what their average tax rate they pay? 8.2%. If we just increase their taxes we proposed to 25%, which isn't the highest tax rate even, it would raise $500 billion new dollars over 10 years. They'd still be very wealthy. Look, Kamala and Tim are going to make them pay their fair share. They'll protect Social Security and Medicare. Trump wants to cut Social Security and Medicare. Kamala and Tim will protect your freedom. They'll protect your right to vote. to protect your civil rights. And you know Trump will do everything to ban abortion nationwide. Oh, he will. You know, Kamala and Tim will do everything.
Thank you, Joe Biden. Now have a good evening. And I think from here on out, it is going to be the culture shift, the generational shift that the party clearly wants. The one thing I noted, the folks in this hall, Democrats, love Joe Biden. They don't hate him. All this, the anger, there wasn't anger about him being in the race. It just wanted him to move on. He has done that. And I think tomorrow, this hall will move on and look squarely to the future.
Yeah. We will be here for all of it, as will all of you. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us tonight. Jonathan Capehart, David Brooks, Judy Woodruff, Amy Walter. You'll be here all week. Thank you for that.
We're going nowhere.
Sleeping here.
Meanwhile, that concludes our broadcast coverage of just the very first night of the Democratic National Convention. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't go anywhere. Our coverage will continue with Laura Barone Lopez and our own Dima Zain reviewing the highlights of the night.
And we'll have a full analysis of the convention and the day's other news on tomorrow's PBS NewsHour. And we'll be back here tomorrow night for day 2 of the convention, as Amna said, where both former President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama are expected to speak. And with that, I am Jeff Bennett.
And I'm Amna Nawaz. For all of us here at PBS News, thank you for joining us.
This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Watching PBS.
Sir. May I start? Right.
You're watching PBS.